Ji, Assalamu alaikum. My dear learners, I hope you will be fine. This is Muhammad Ramzan, and welcome to my YouTube channel, that is Training for All. And today we are going to discuss module number 3, controlling risk. This is overall fifth lecture of Iosh managing safely. I have already uploaded 2 lectures from module 1 and 2 lectures from module 2, and overall this is the fifth lecture. And in this lecture, we will discuss about the controlling the risk. In first chapter, we have discussed that what is the role of safety officer and why the health and safety is managed in the organization, and what we have to do as a safety manager, what will be the responsibilities of safety manager, and what will be the accountability of the safety manager. In second chapter, in module 2, we have discussed about the what is the risk and what are the hazards and how to identify the hazard and how to assess the hazard. And we have discussed that whenever you are going to calculate the risk, then there is a formula that the risk is always equal to likelihood multiplied by the consequences. Likelihood is the chance and consequence is the result, that if it will happen, what will be the severity or what will be the outcome. In module number 3, we will discuss about the controlling the risk. Mean once the risks are identified, assessment are carried out, now this is the time to take the control measures. Control measures mean you are going to eliminate the losses, eliminate the risk, or you are going to handle the risk. In this chapter, we have a 2 learning objectives. We have a 2 learning point. The first is how do you reduce the risk? For example, once the risks are identified and assessment are carried out, and you are always taking the corrective actions on high risk level. Now, question is that how do you reduce the risk? What will be your option to reduce the risk? My dear learner, as a safety engineer, as a safety manager, we have a 3 option to control the risk: either to reduce the likelihood, either to reduce the consequences, or in some cases who try to reduce the both, mean who try to reduce the likelihood as well as who try to reduce the consequences. And the second learning point which we will try to discuss in this module, how do you decide which risk once the risk control has been selected? Now, question is that how you will decide that which is the best option or which is the best control according to our resources, according to the type of the hazard, as well as according to the nature and business of the organization. So, further we will discuss these 2 questions and decide that how do you reduce the risk. For example, here you can see that one person is driving a car and the speed limit is 40 kilometer, right? So this is for general public, and if we talk about the learners, if we talk about for those who are learning the driving, so what we will do ultimately, we will reduce the speed limit for learners. It means that what we are doing in this case, we are trying to reduce the likelihood that accident should not happen, because that learner have to drive the car with a very slow speed, almost it should be about 30 kilometer per hour. As we discussed earlier, that as a safety manager, as a safety supervisor, we have a 3 option to control the risk. One is to reduce the likelihood, mean basically you are trying to reduce the possibility, reduce the chances, and the second one is you are going to reduce the consequence. Consequence mean that if accident will happen, what will be the result? This is also called the severity. This is also called the consequence as well as the outcome of the accident. And in some cases, we try to reduce the both. Mean at some extent, we try to reduce the likelihood, and at some extent, we try to reduce the consequences. So the purpose is, my dear learner, to reduce the risk up to the acceptable level. So we will try to control all these. For example, if we see in this picture that there is a woodwork in progress, there is a woodwork shop, and there is a cutter where they try to cut the material. For example, if we try to carry out the assessment of this cutter, then we will estimate that what will be the level of the likelihood in this case, and what will be the level of the consequences in this case. For example, in this case, we came to know that the likelihood is about 4, because there is almost 50% or 50% portion of the cutter is naked. Mean you can have a easily contact with this part of the blade. And on the other side, when we talk about the consequences, it means that basically we are assessing that if it will have a contact with some person, what will be the result. It means there is the possibility of hand injury, there is the possibility of hand disability due to this naked portion, or due to this beard portion of the cutter. So, my dear learners, as we discussed earlier, either reduce the likelihood or either to reduce the consequences. In this case, you can see in this picture, we are just trying to reduce the consequences. So, what we have done, basically, we have introduced the guard, or we have installed the guard on this cutter. So, by introducing or installing the guard, you can see the likelihood has been shifted from 4 to 1. Previously, likelihood was 4, consequences was also 4. 4 multiplied by 4 is equal to 16. But after the installation of this guard, now you can see that the likelihood is shifted from 4 to 1. It means we try to reduce the likelihood. Now, as per the formula, consequences the 4, likelihood is the 1. So 4 multiplied by 1 is equal to 4. Now you can say that your risk level is reduced from 16 to 4. In next case, if we carry out the assessment, you see that the likelihood of this person mean what are the chances that this person can be affected. There is a likelihood of is 3, and when we talk about the consequences, we can say that this chemical is a very hazard chemical, and there is the possibility of inhaling, skin infections, and some other body organ. There is the possibility those body organ may be affected. So what we are doing in this case, we did not try to reduce the likelihood, but in this case, basically we have changed the chemicals or changed the paint. By changing the paint, you can see that the consequence has been reduced from 4 to 2. So again, by putting these values in the formula, you can see that the likelihood multiplied by the consequences, 2 multiplied by 3 is equal to 6. So you can see, you can say that the after introducing the new paint, which is having the less hazard, again your risk level has been reduced from 12 to 6. Now, the risk which you can see in this picture, that is about 6. This is called the residual risk. Residual risk can be acceptable or can be unacceptable. For example, if the residual level is 6, and you see from your company policy, you see from the standard, that either it is acceptable or it is unacceptable. So, for example, if you have set the limit that all the risk which is from 1 to 6, that would be acceptable. So, you can say this is the acceptable risk. Maybe that your company policy is that the risk level from 1 to 5 will be acceptable, more than 5 would not be acceptable. So, this 6 would be, in that case, that would be unacceptable. So again, if we carry out the assessment of this paint, again, the likelihood is 3 and consequences are the 4. 3 fours are 12. And what we will do in this case, or we are going to do, basically, you can see in the picture that in this case, we try to reduce the likelihood as well as we try to reduce the consequences. You can see that the painting method has been changed, as well as the paint has also been changed. Now you can see the likelihood is shifted from 4 to 2, mean is reduced, and again consequences are also reduced, shifted from 4 to 2. So as per this value, 2 multiplied by 2 is equal to 4. So mean your risk level is 4. Again, it you have to see this level of the risk, that is 4, from your standard, that either if it is acceptable or it is unacceptable. It would be according to the legal requirement, as well as it would be according to the company policy. So my dear learners, till now we have discussed that sometime we are reducing the likelihood, and in some cases we are trying to reduce the consequences, and in some cases we are trying to reduce the both. So the purpose is to reduce the risk, so the person should be safe, so the environment should be safe, so the equipment should be safe. But in all three conditions, we have seen that the risk is reduced, likelihood is reduced, consequences are also reduced, but we have never seen that the we have reduced the risk up to 0%. Still, in spite of all our efforts, still there is a residual risk in all three conditions. So you can say any risk that remains after the controls have been implemented is called the residual risk. In first case, after introducing the guard, the risk level is residual risk is 5, and by changing the chemical, the risk level is 6, that is the residual risk. And by introducing the new painting method as well as changing the chemical, the risk level is 4. So my dear learners, all these risks which have been left after the control has been implemented is called the residual risk. Now question is that how you will decide, how do you decide which risk control to use? Since there are so many risk control to choose from, how do you know which are the most effective? Again, we know there are different types of risk control measures. Now the question is that what do you think, which would be the most effective, which would be the most suitable risk control for you? How it can be the, what would be the criteria to select the risk control? Ultimately, we will see that what would be the involvement of the cost, what will be the maintenance of that control measures, who would be responsible for carry out the inspections and monitoring that either the risk which we have been which has been reduced, that is properly maintained or not. So, my dear learners, this slide is very important, and basically, this is called the hierarchy of risk control. Hierarchy of risk control, you can say this is the chain of command. Chain of command mean that whenever there is a risk in your organization and you have assessed that is the major risk, you have a five option to control that risk. First one is the eliminate. Eliminate mean that we are always trying to eliminate. Eliminate mean we are trying to finish the problem, or we are trying to pull out the evils from the roots, you can say. That is the eliminate. But in some cases this elimination is not possible. If it is not possible, then we will go for the reduction, mean we will try to reduce the likelihood or either to reduce the consequences. And the third one, that is the preventing the contact. Preventing the contact mean that we cannot eliminate the hazard, we cannot reduce the hazard, but what we are doing in this case, basically we are trying to prevent the contact of the worker from the chemical, from the machine. For example, if we have the machine, all guards must be placed so that there should be no contact of individual or operator with the machine. For example, if we have the different chemicals in the organization, so what we are doing, we are ensuring that all chemicals should be kept at the separate location. A signboard should be displayed, and workers should also be ensured that only trained and competent workers are supposed to enter in this area and they can handle the chemical. And the fourth control, that is the safe system of work. Safe system of work mean that we are introducing the documentation system like the permit to work, like the standard operating procedures, like the checklist, like the job guides, mean all the written methods how to perform the job safely, how to perform the job and how to perform the job safely. All those procedures have been introduced. Even our disciplinary action, our enforcement and monitoring, and you can say fines and some other terminative reason can also be introduced in this safe system of work. And the last control, that is the personal protective equipment. So here there are two questions. One is that what do you think, as per these five control, which one is the most effective control? Ultimately answer will be eliminate is the most effective control, because in eliminate we are trying to eliminate the problem, mean we are trying to control the problem 100%. So that's why this is the most effective. Again, another question, that which is the least effective risk control in this case. Ultimately, you will say that the personal protective equipment is the least control. Now, question is, and usually, my dear learner, this question is usually asked by the interviewer, that why we are using the personal protective as a last option, as a last line of defense. Ultimately, you have to justify, you have to convince your interview that we are using the personal protective equipment as a last option because there are certain limitations of these personal protective equipment, and moreover that control will be the weakest control who's having the depending on the human behavior, that either employees will use the helmet or employee will not use. So that's why we are using the personal protective as a last level of control, because due to its limitations these personal protective equipment will not protect. So my dear, here you can see this is the basically hierarchy. You cannot directly jump to the PP or safe system work. You will always go for the eliminate hazard first, then reduce hazard, and then preventing the contact and safe system of work, and the next one is the personal protective equipment. So, my dear learner, this is all about this lecture, and I will try to complete this module 3 in lecture number 6. So please keep in touch, and please subscribe your channel if you like these videos, because these videos are always informative for you, and you can take guidance as a reference, and you can effectively communicate in the organization. Thank you very much, and see you again.